p.m. I will call a common council meeting to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Iverson.
Here.
Schatzinger.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Gallops.
Here.
Bernard.
Here.
Gotsky.
Here.
Sorensen. Here. Split.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm Pastor Melissa Herlichka of Grace Lutheran Church, and it is an honor to open you all in prayer. Let us pray. Holy One, known by many names and beyond all names, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of community, and Spirit of justice, we thank you for this community, for the beauty of the prairies and the streams, for the love of the people, and for all who give of their time and service to this community with honor. As we gather this night and as we serve in our work throughout the week, bless us with your spirit of guidance and compassion and courage. May this council have open hearts to all the needs of this community. May they make decisions for the betterment of all who reside in our community now or in the future. And may all of us who live and serve in this community make it a place of love and joy for generations to come. This we pray in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy, all that we hold good and right and true. May it be so. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Howard, seconded by Doug. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. There's no public comment tonight. Next is accepting informal reports from standing committees and staff. Is there a motion to approve as published?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by John, seconded by Ellen. Any discussion there, or would anything like to be pulled for discussion?
I'd like to pull the Public Works report.
Public Works. Number 7.
Or maybe it was the water, I'm sorry. No, it's a question of the water tower, and I think that's water, isn't it?
So pulling water, wastewater report. So number 9, not number 7. Any further discussion on the rest of them? So the motion is to approve the published reports with the exception of number 9. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are approved. Doug?
Yeah, I have a question on the large rust spot that is on the industrial park water tower. And according to this, it's gotten significantly worse as the years gone on. Just wondering if you could any more information about repairing that, or if it's a danger or anything to the industrial park.
Jeremy's here. We can talk about it.
I guess currently we're waiting on a response from SEH for evaluation of the rust spot to see if it needs further or immediate attention.
Okay. All I had, thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the water wastewater report?
I'll make a motion to approve the water wastewater report. Second.
Been moved by Doug, seconded by David. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Next is a consent calendar. Just common council minutes there. Is there a motion to approve as published?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ellen, seconded by John. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. All right, our first agenda item for tonight then is capital project financing and debt report. Adam, do you want to start us off with this?
Sure, I can do that. On Zoom, we have Lisa from Ellers. Phil had a conflict tonight, so Lisa is filling in. We've been obviously working on a large project internally here and working through design of a public works facility. That process through with SEH. We're meeting bi-weekly, kind of refining everything. And then ultimately, we had promised the council a discussion about financing and how the project of this magnitude, because it will be an expensive project, anywhere from $8 to $10 million range is what we're looking at. How will it be financed? So we reached out to Ellers, our financial consultant, to look at our financial situation with our debt to discuss funding this project in particular. So with that, I can certainly turn it over to Lisa to get into the report. There was a packet of information on your desk, so you can sort of follow along. And I think, Lisa, you can share your screen if you want to do that. We'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to share my screen and it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Second. Try it now.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So on table 1, what we have here is our equalized value projection. What we do is we take a look at a 5-year historical regarding your change in economic as well as new construction, and both on a TID in and TID out basis. And then we do a discount on that to be conservative. And for your TID out equalized value, that brings you to a 1.21% appreciation. And when we speak about TID out value, that is related to what we'll show as a tax impact. When we talk about TID in, that relates to your geo debt capacity, where you're limited to 5% of your total TID in equalized value. Table 2, this is your existing general obligation debt. So working left to right, the left column is your total general obligation debt. Then we show the abatement payments to arrive at your net tax levy. Then divided that by your equalized TID out, you arrive at a tax rate per 1,000. And you'll notice from 2023 to 2024, there is a significant jump in the tax rate. And that is related to 2 2017 banknotes that we would include in the 2023 issue to refinance and restructure. Table 3, this shows the projects that we would be financing through the different debt issues. In 2023, we're looking at some roads, public works, water, and then those 2 2017 GEO banknotes. The levy portion and then water, and then the 2 banknotes would be levy as well. In 2025, we're showing your public works building, and that is allocated between levy, water, and sewer. The 2025 issue and beyond, these are really just placeholders for future projects. The 2025 issue is related to TID improvements. So where this would affect your capacity, it wouldn't affect the tax rate because you would be abating that levy. Then 2026 shows some revenue bonds, both for sewer and water. And in 2029, it would be, some of that would be a levy, water, and sewer portion. Any questions so far?
So just to be clear on some of those projects, Some of those are anticipated, they're estimates. Some of them we're committed to, like the 2029 is the state highway project. So we're just sort of building in additional projects in the future on top of the large project in 2025, which is then, at this point, the estimate was $9.5 million funding.
Table 4, we show a debt allocation. It's just by purpose. So you have the levy portions, which include that first levy section, and then the geo note portions. And then a part of that is the water. 2025 geo bonds. So this is for your public works building. And again, that's allocated between levy, water, and sewer. And so we're showing the debt payments by purpose. And here we're showing a 20-year geo bond. At the time of financing, we can evaluate additional options like the USDA loan that you could potentially go up to 40 years and amortize that over 40 years. Do I need to scroll or zoom in on this? Or can everybody see
Copy of
it?
it, so.
Okay, all right. So that blue section is that existing debt that we went over on table 2. So I'm going to focus on the orange section where we show the debt issues that we showed in the sources and uses, and then any abatements to those new debt issues. And again, so you have your total geo debt less any abatements to arrive at your total new debt service levy. And on an equalized basis, we come up with a new tax rate where you kind of max out in 2027 and 2028 at $2.53. So we're kind of ramping up to where you would end in this planning period. And we have it dropping down so you can build in for future debt issues. Is there any questions on this table?
Does appear to be.
Okay, table 7, this is your general obligation debt capacity. So in the blue section again, it's your existing debt. We have the projected equalized TID-in value where it is appreciating by 1.06%. And then we have what it would be your debt limit based on that 5% state statutes, what your existing principal outstanding is, to arrive at what percentage of that 5% you're at. So in 2022, you're about at 40% of that limit. Adding in the projected debt issues, the general obligation, notes and bonds, we combine that for a new proposed principal outstanding and then arrive at what that percentage limit is. And in 2025 is where you reach 68%, where you still have approximately 8.7 million of residual capacity. Table 8, this is for your revenue debt coverage. This table does show an all-in debt coverage. When you issue revenue debt in your bond covenants, you're required to maintain your net revenues a certain percentage above your debt payments. And for the utilities, that's 1.25 times that annual debt payment. In this table, though, we do have both the revenue debt and the general obligation debt and show the coverage on there. And Adam can speak more to this, but I know there are plans. We're already currently working on some rate increases for the utilities. Is there any questions on this table?
Doug?
Yeah, I've some questions here. I'm trying to assimilate all this. On table 8, it has the red numbers. That's some kind of that's a negative number. This is capacity at, would be column 1, 2, 3, 5. And it's like 17,433, and it ramps up to 342,627. Could you explain those numbers a little bit more?
Sure. It's based off of this column right here should be at least 1.25 times that total debt payment. And so this is showing the shortfall of that amount. So you can see where this isn't quite to 1.25 and then we drop down to 0.76. So this is the shortfall of the revenues that you need to have above that debt payment.
Okay, so what does that mean for us then if we're way below that? What does the city need to do to try to bridge that?
Yeah, like, if you can see the sewer side of this, it's all red, right? And this is based off of 2021 rates and 2021 audit.
Right,
We did the rate increase.
right,
That will drastically change this
Okay.
to allow for that debt capacity to be built in and meet that 1.25% or 1.25 capacity. Water, on the flip side, we're working through the rate case on that with CLA. Right now, we are in a healthy position, but as we have needs in that department and in the utility to address, those rates will need to be adjusted to accommodate this debt as well as other debt if we have other projects.
right, because we are in essence kind of subsidizing the water and sewer, whereas the ratepayers, everybody in this room pretty much, has to pay a bit more to cover those costs, plus a little bit so that we don't have a collapse.
Yeah, I mean, right now, based on this, on the 2021 audit, water is in a healthier position
Right.
than sewer. We addressed sewer through the last budget cycle with a
Right.
rate increase, a
Right.
50% rate increase. That
Right.
should swing this significantly to begin being able to address the project. The rate case, though, for water will build in additional funds for projects and other plans that we have. So we're addressing the issue to avoid that and to avoid ultimately, yes, the idea that other funds are covering any losses in the utilities. That is not a healthy practice for an enterprise fund where their own revenues should be covering their expenses.
So like for the water case that we haven't yet got approved or we're having cement, I don't know where that is in the stage. That would then help go to fund water lines, wells, and things like that.
Yeah, so there's been capital planning done on the water side. We have a list of projects. We're doing a well site investigation. As we identify the projects and priorities and what the cost is going to be for that, we will have to build that into our rate case ahead of time. There will then be like a well site, if we have a well that we have to do and we're gonna go get, say, like a safe drinking water loan for that, that will be an independent analysis at that time to determine if additional rates will be needed to be increased for that project specifically to absorb that debt. So it's going to be kind of a step-by-step approach with both of these utilities as revenues continue to come in and we analyze rates, and we frankly have to improve the systems that are in need of much repair.
Okay, so part of this is also done to help show us where we need to go financially so that we can then go forward with the new Department of Public Works facility. Would that be fairly correct?
I think the exercise here really is to show that the city's debt capacity and ability to pay for a project of that magnitude, we can do it. We have the capacity to do it. We have the ability to structure it in different ways to also lessen the tax burden of that debt on the taxpayers. Ultimately, at a $9.5 million project, I would call your attention mostly to page 7, which is pretty much the total sum. What we have built in and what Ellers has helped us with is an entire formula here and an entire spreadsheet analysis of what the future looks like on a very conservative basis with growth. Our ability to borrow is based on our equalized value. okay? We do not like to go to about over 50% of our debt capacity. That's just the general rule of thumb. In the current situation in 2022, I believe it is here, we are approximately 40% of our equalized value out of our debt. So we have 60% remaining, or $15 million of capacity right now. As you see here, as we refund some debt and we sort of pay off debt, getting to 2024 ahead of the, where we would be funding this project, the Public Works Garage, there would be a spike. You go to 68% on a very conservative number. If we, for example, grow more than 1.2%, that number won't be 68%. If we go down in equalized value, that will be more than 68%, correct, right? Because that's just the
Right.
math. Every year it goes up and down. So on a very conservative basis, we would have 32% of our debt capacity left to do anything that came our way. Obviously, we have to sort of do this project and then pay it down. To get to that point again where by 2028, you are at 50% again. So you continue to do that. You have a few other projects that we have put into this equation as well. And with that growth that's assumed in the equalized value, we remain relatively stable through those years of having debt capacity to continue to do things in the event of them needing to be done. Obviously, these are big projects. We wouldn't want to rely on debt for everything. That is certainly not the goal. But at the end of the day, just having that capacity in the event of an economic development project, in the event of, something happening that we need the funds, it is there. So the pro forma here shows that this is a rather, we are capable of handling this project.
What's the breakout between general obligation, water, and sewer of the public works structure?
The general breakout on that is around $8 million for the general fund, and then about $1.4 million split between the two utilities.
Okay.
Ellen?
We're closing how many TID districts in the next 2 years?
The intention would be to close 5 and 6 in the next couple years, which I believe, if Lisa can comment, I believe that is a big component of our ability to do this.
Right, that's what I was going to share, is that by
Yep.
closing those TIDs, the increment no longer remains in the TID and it's applied to the tax base. Okay?
It spreads out the debt to absorb it
Yep.
easier.
That's represented in here, isn't it?
Yep. But I think it's important for people to realize that because you're retiring those two, that's one of the reasons this becomes more affordable. Because that increment no longer remains within the TID for improvements.
And those are significant TIF districts. 6 is a significant TIF district, value-wise.
Speaking of things being represented, my colleague just asked a little bit earlier about the sewer debt and the rate increase, and so that's why the column in the red under DS capacity is what we're saying now shouldn't be in the red because of our increase. Why not have this chart show that since we have the numbers?
We don't have the numbers because we haven't audited our financials with the rate increase in. So, Ellers is using the most recent financial statements as a conservative approach to say this is the starting point. I believe, right?
Correct. We don't have the 2022 audit numbers. If we had a draft, we could plug those numbers in. But right now, all we had was the 2021 audit.
And the rate increase took effect January 1st of this year.
Yep, so even it would be completely speculative. So we just show it the way we have it in the financials as a way to be safest. But it shows the need for the rate increase there. It just highlights the need.
Yeah.
Doug?
Another question, the TIDs that are closing soon, were we planning on extending them about a year for housing issues or not?
We will discuss that. We have a lot of, things up in the air that we're juggling at this point with the TIF districts. The intention would be to extend them and take advantage of that if it makes the most sense. At the same time as we have other priorities, we may close a certain 1 or 2 TIF districts early. We may have to extend a TIF district because it's distressed. So we need to get under the 12% threshold because we currently can't create a new TIF district. Some of the debt here that was forecasted was $1.5 million as in anticipation of creating a new TIF district in the next couple of years. So we've tried to build that in, but right now our hands are sort of tied for doing anything new, but obviously built in, and we may close a positive cash flow TID early as well, just to build us more flexibility to do other projects if they come about. So the intention would be to always utilize that, but at the same time, when we have a project like this, is it worth utilizing, or is it worth, having the debt kind of be less of an impact to the taxpayers? So it's all going to be a balancing act and look at what the cost benefit of it all is at that time.
Okay, well, appreciate your answers. Thanks.
We already discussed this, but I want to make sure I understand it. Going back to table 7, how in year 2025, we are asking us as a community to go to that 68% of the limit when we were saying that typically you don't want to go over 50%. I understand taking healthy risks if you have a reason to. So are we saying that, and then there's a plan to go back to 50%. So there is that plan. Are we saying that potentially we will have to be talking about if we're okay to go over 50%, or are we still trying to find ways to bring in revenue that we don't have to go over that?
It's debt supported, taxpayer supported debt. So what comes down then is, this is based on a 20-year note. If we find a program that stretches it out 30, 40 years, our debt capacity is a little different in those scenarios because the payment is extended out. So it's going to be, at the end of the day, everybody is debt averse. It's scary, right? At the same time, you look at it, there's still $8.7 million worth of debt capacity. And the reality is we don't want to go past the 50, but we still have the capacity to borrow if there is a problem, right? So like I said, the overall plan here would be to do this, get to that point, and then just let it settle back down, right? And get ready for the next project, which is the state highway. That's the general consensus in this model.
If I'm understanding correctly, these are based on conservative increases in equalized value. So if our equalized value increases, it could also reduce the percentage of limit. So if we have a couple of different projects, such as flash trucking and some buildings of homes and things of that nature, and increase our equalized value, those numbers can reduce.
And just for clarification, new construction of housing adds to the equalized value.
Yeah, generally speaking.
Yeah. It's growth.
Yeah.
It's a methodology of measuring growth.
Any further questions on this?
Just be clear, once we get other numbers and before we do the project, we're going to go through this again?
So I think what'll happen here is the next report will come from SEH on this project as an update to the design elements with estimates for what the overall project cost will be. Like I said, we used $9.5 million. We're trying to keep it at around that $9.5 to $10 million overall project. We'll see how that goes. There could be challenges with that. But ultimately, that'll be the next report. As we build out the project further in the design phases, we will continue to work with Ellers on the financing of it. Ultimately, we don't have to really finance it until it's it's pretty much done, right? Like you can do construction financing, you can do different things to finance the project and then refund it with long-term debt. So the fact is we won't be taking on the debt for this project for probably a year, 2 years, maybe even 3. In addition to it, the structure of that debt, whether it be a 30-year or, for example, if we want to layer the debt, we had talked about that with Ellers as well, Lisa and Phil, about structuring the debt so that hit is not as high, and you can work on how you want to issue the debt in terms of years paying principal versus or just interest only, things of that nature, extend it out further. So there's tons of different little things we can do to get to a point where this is funded, but that is probably 2-3 years from now. But it's just showing that it can get done.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Lisa.
Yep, thank you. You guys have a good night.
You too, thank you.
Bye.
All right, moving on then, sidewalk repair proposal. This would be for grinding sidewalks that have heaved in winters. This proposal is for Safe Step LLC, not to exceed $25,000. Staff recommends approval. Would there be a motion to approve this proposal?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ellen, seconded by Doug. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Terry, then Howard.
Is there a benefit to grinding over mud jacking? Or is this just the most economical method of doing this?
Adam or
Alan can answer that. I know the answer though.
I've not worked in a community that offered mud jacking. The last community, they would allow residents to pursue mud jacking on their own to avoid any cost. There might be some benefit, but just trying to get companies in here. As it is, the grinding is, this is the only company that I'm aware of that even offers it anymore, at least on the magnitude that we're pursuing it.
And then when we grind, we can only grind up to a certain amount off. And then if we have to exceed that, then we're going with a replacement of that.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And this company will come through, they'll survey it, address by address, identify which ones can be ground or eligible for being ground versus which ones would need to be replaced. And then I'll take that list for replacement. And that's where in our road construction, I'm seeking costing for replacing in this area also.
Are we concentrating on a certain area, or are we pretty much here, there, and everywhere with this?
The core area this year is on the map that I worked out with Safe Step. It's page 3 of their proposal. Based on the $25,000, we figure we can get the areas in red done.
And would you please state what those are so the people watching know
Sure.
exactly where we're?
Picking up from where we left off last year, we'll start with the west side of Ransom from Thorne down to Griswold, and then also do the east side of Woodside from Thorne to Griswold, and then also do the cross streets of Watertown, Howard, and Griswold between Woodside and Watson.
Thank you.
I like that their emails are notrippin.com, so they don't have people trip. So with the areas that are identified as priorities, that's where this company is going to go. But there are likely other sidewalks throughout the whole city that are going to be identified. Can you, I guess my question overall is, can you explain the process throughout our whole city for how a sidewalk might be identified as being unsafe? And then what are the expectations of the property owner?
If we get complaint or concern expressed to our office, we will take a look at it, and based on the severity, we'll determine if it merits replacement with this year's program. We have a handful of those identified at this point in time. Otherwise, if it is your typical trip hazard that exists in this general area, we're going to wait until the program gets to their neighborhood. If they want to do it on their own, they can do it on their own, but we don't have the budget to help everyone in the entire city.
So this is a neat thing too, so that when the city identifies these areas, we help the property owner with payments of it. I have people that ask me, so I want to ask you so everyone hears it. People want to know when they will get notified about a sidewalk having to be repaired, and then about how many days do they have before then the city would go ahead and repair it?
When Safe Step gives us the list, within a week, we will send out a notification to all the property owners. Depending on Safe Step's schedule and the date that the time that the letter goes out will dictate how much time that they would have to do it on their own to avoid the 50% charge by the city. What I am learning in this community, when the city splits the cost with the property owner, most people are finding that they can't do it for less than that 50% charge, so most people don't do it on their own.
That's what I could imagine. I did have someone ask me to ask if people could have 3 days minimum. Probably that's beyond your control, but someone.
It's always more than that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm hoping for 2 to 4 weeks is my goal. This is my first year here, and because I'm getting a late start on it compared to my predecessor, Safe Step schedule really plays into the amount of time that we can give the property owner once the notice goes out.
And then my last question is the reason why we don't go with our full budget for sidewalk improvement for this year because we want to have money left over for complaints for individual things?
I need some money to cover the full replacement costs, or the cost, and that I'm estimating that your typical 4-inch thick sidewalk will be upwards of $200 per cake, and so I need probably upwards of $10,000 for that. Once I know the extent of the full replacement, along with the handful that I have already identified in the community on I guess, a random list throughout the community, then I'll be able to sit down with Safe Step and evaluate whether we can increase the going westward onto the west side of Woodside. So that's the game plan.
Couple of questions. Have you ever used these guys before?
They did a lot of work in Kimberly when I was in the
And
village
you're
Kimberly.
pretty happy with them
Yeah.
as far as what they do? Because the 25, just to say 25,000, I mean, they can do 2 pads and call it a day. I mean, we're not going to have anything like this happen, right? I mean,
No.
because it's a little too generic here as far as what they're doing.
The amount in red, the area in red is what they anticipate being able to cover for the $25,000. And that's based upon some costings that they did provide, if not in this, in a previous communication to me.
Okay.
They talked about how many $1,000s per mile of sidewalk that they typically can cover in the city of Ripon,
All right.
based on history.
So the 25,000, is that the city share, and then citizens are going to pay the other 25?
Technically, that would be split.
Okay, so we're splitting the 25,000.
So-
Okay.
What I didn't know this year is how quickly do people pay back, and could we run this where the city's budget is what we are contributing, and could we double the program? So if we have a $40,000 budget, can we run an $80,000 program, knowing that half of that is going to be assessed to the property owner? I did not ask that question.
The answer is no, that's not traditionally how it's been
Okay.
done. It's been $25,000 a year,
Okay,
all in, so we bumped that to 40.
Right.
So we're trying to do more. We have used Safe Step for the last, I think, 4 years in town here. And they do a nice job of marking and mapping out everything that they've done, documenting it all, showing before and after all of that. But the goal would be to keep the overall sidewalk replacement program to $40,000 a year.
Okay.
Irrespective of the payback. Correct?
Yeah, whatever Lud said.
I don't know if I can ask this here, but it's about sidewalks. Because I have an area in my district that was just redone because of, I believe, the gas line through the area. And what I noticed in just one block over, where the ramp is that goes up, there's a nice yellow pad. It looks like it might be metal from Nina Foundry for the bumps, in case someone is visually impaired, right? And then how it was just redone, it was not yellow, it was not metal. I think it was just the concrete, and it's already breaking off. It really seems like a downgrade as far as neighborhood appeal. I don't know if that fits into this. This is just grinding, I realize, but I guess it's a general question of when someone's repairing sidewalks, do we have a general expectation of that repair?
So for the gas situation that you're describing, just had a conversation with another utility contractor in the downtown area, and when a crosswalk section is replaced, they are required to replace it in compliance with the ADA requirements, and that's where the truncated domes, the yellow domes that come up, that project up, that's actually an ADA requirement. So if a sidewalk or a crosswalk section was done without that, if you let me know where that is at, and I'll take a look at it, and we'll try to figure out who did the work or why they didn't do it with the truncated domes.
I will, because it was just done within the last few weeks, and just one block over, it's metal, nice yellow, where it was done here, it's already chipping off.
Sure.
Thanks.
Quick question. Is there a reason we don't do our own evaluation and save that evaluation money for repairs?
Time.
Just time?
I can tell you I don't have the time for it.
Okay, that's a good enough answer. I'm kind of with Dave on, it's kind of a general, contract here that we don't know how much is evaluation compared to how much is going to be spent on the actual grinding.
I read last year's report, I read the proposal prior to this one. I did not develop any reservations that the unit costs were taking advantage of the city of Ripon.
Okay. Then one last question for Lud. If we hire this company and they do an evaluation in a certain block, somebody trips on something that they didn't flag, is it still, is it a city issue? Is it a company issue? Is it the homeowner's issue?
It obviously will depend on when they did the work, how they did the work. If they're taking pictures of what they're doing.
Right.
So if we can point out that clearly that was defective workmanship, then we can point the finger back. As a general rule, we're the pocket they're going to look for first. And then we bring in other people depending on the circumstances. So yeah, defective work, we certainly could point the finger back at the tortfeasor.
I'm sorry. They do take pictures, everything, and document it?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Any further questions? Thank you, Alan. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the proposal from Safe Step for not to exceed $25,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Thank you very much. Our last agenda item here is the employee handbook revision presentation and discussion. Just a quick note, this is just for getting the information into your hands. We'll have a full discussion on our next meeting. Adam, with that? You want to go over the highlights?
Can you fix that one? Yep. All right, thank you. So taking a step back, looking at kind of the history here of the employee handbook. The employee handbook has not received any major attention for since 2012 after Act 10 was done in the state of Wisconsin. There have been periodic adjustments to that handbook for health insurance contributions over the past couple of years, but nothing as a comprehensive review. So over time, the handbook has become outdated and lacks consistency across departments. The goal of this really is to create fair and consistent policy across every department within the city that calls this handbook their employee handbook, and modernize some of the handbook to reflect the modern workforce and better strive to promote individuals within the organization and more or less invest in our people a little bit more comprehensively. Also to promote flexibility, best practices, safety, and work-life balance, and then allow the city and department heads to effectively manage staff. We formed a ad hoc committee. That ad hoc committee has met 3 times over the last 4 months, reviewing changes to the handbook. They have brought forward a handbook to review, and through that process, over 4 months, there's been multiple meetings, participation from staff, feedback provided, and from staff, the meetings with public works staff, with water utility staff, wastewater staff, getting opinions, suggestions, recommendations, and trying to find compromises to make sure that their concerns are being addressed in meaningful ways. At the same time, there are changes that do need to be made because the current policy and the current execution and implementation of that policy has not been consistent. It has been not at times appropriate and or affordable. Okay, so although this is a large change in a lot of ways, 90% of this handbook is not changing. The vast majority of the language is remaining the same. What's changing are some pretty broad concepts and just some new language for benefits, workplace conditions, things of that nature. You had in your packet a copy of a summary document. I don't think it printed in color, so I apologize because there's green and yellow, and the changes are summarized in the green and yellow. But we can sort of go through this if you would like to go through the exercise of going through the major changes. I am more than happy to do that. Again, the recommendation or the goal is to get this in front of you. I know it's a long document. It's 60, 70 pages long. Like I said, the majority of it is not changing, so focusing on the highlighted sections is really where we would talk about tonight, but ultimately we would have the goal of pushing a final resolution to change the handbook at the May 22nd Common Council meeting. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how the committee or how you consulted with either the League of Municipalities or other places for policy so that we make sure that we're not updating these in a vacuum, that they do align with other municipalities?
Every municipality has a different handbook, right? I can with confidence tell you that the League of Wisconsin Municipalities does not go that far into providing draft handbooks. What I will say is that there was a ton of research done here. Examples pulled from communities all across the state. every corner of the state, from Lancaster to Green Bay to my former community, Hillsborough, to Clintonville, to Oshkosh, to everywhere in between. Looking for handbook examples, looking at language, trying to find the appropriate mix of policies to not have to recreate the wheel. At the end of the day, every organization and community has different values, and sometimes their handbook reflects those values. Sometimes it doesn't. So some of the things in here, you know, are not going to be found in every community across the state of Wisconsin. But I will say with confidence that the majority of the changes proposed here are included and or becoming included in handbooks because of the situations we are in with employees and the value that employees can add and the opportunities we can provide employees. So, so there's a lot in here, kind of new stuff, but none of this is the only thing I would say is kind of a new idea that I didn't see was the concept of a service club reimbursement. And that was based off of a Waukesha policy that Waukesha actually allows 8 hours of paid time off for every employee to go participate in volunteerism in the community. So instead of giving 8 hours off to do that, we said, you know, why not, you know, reimburse staff $50 to be a part of the community or a community organization in their spare time to promote that. That's about the only one that I would say was unique to Ripon and my research on it all. However you want, if you want me to just go through it, I can just hit the highlights if that's what you would like. Certainly don't want to take up more time than necessary, but this is an important time to ask questions. So you can see the comprehensive list. Sorry, it's a little big there, but we start getting into it. You have your new table of contents. So the organizational structure. So this clearly defines who this applies to, who it doesn't, which has always been a point of concern. So clarifying that, you know, library employees are governed by the library board and their policies. They can certainly default or adopt this, as well as represented employees under collective bargaining agreements are not under this agreement or this handbook. They have their own collective bargaining agreement. Talking about just the general organization structure, so on and so forth. So a little bit different from what we had previously, but overall just setting the expectation for who this does apply to and general workforce rules, policies, etc. So that's that section. Moving into it, we have included a diversity statement for our organization to include in the handbook to call attention to diversity in our workforce as well as our community.
I'm going to ask a question here, if you don't mind.
Yep.
We go in here and we say we strive to include diversity, equity, and inclusion practices at the center of our daily work and condemn discrimination by or against members of our community. We are committed to treating everyone fairly, respectfully, and without bias. Why did we continue on with the extra describers when we really don't need it after we go in there without bias?
Because that's how policies are written, as an examples, throughout the state of Wisconsin, as well as raising awareness.
Can I make a comment? The League of Women Voters of the United States and all 50 states as well as local leagues recently rewrote diversity statements, and we include that language also. It's become standard operating procedure.
I just know that it is going to offend some people. So, I mean, when you already say that, you know, we're going to treat everybody fairly, respectfully, and without bias, I mean, that's everything right there, without having to get into the, you know, the terms that are going to offend people.
Oh, you're asking me?
No, I'm just commenting.
I was like,
Unfortunately, that's the nature of the times we live in now, that,
I mean,
like that have to be put in.
Does it have to, though?
Well, it's become a general practice.
we're the ones that say whether or not it has to be put in there. Are we not?
It's meaningless if you don't put it in there.
right.
It has no teeth and no force of law if you don't identify the characteristics that you're talking about in terms of diversity. So to say it without those specifics would be, don't bother. You've got to put them in there to cover yourself in terms of the issues that could be raised by those that fit within those classifications. That's why it's a standard operating practice for diversity. And many of these have been challenged. Many of these have been determined to be classes that represent those that have been discriminated against. So that's why the words are there.
Julie?
Well, I just have a question, I guess. If my colleague was saying, isn't it enough to say that it's for everybody? You know, that it means all, without bias. Here it says treating everyone, but then you have concern about words that describe people that would include everyone. I would ask, you know, in some sense, what are your concerns? You know, if you're saying I stand for everyone, but then you're taking issue with words that describe everyone, I don't understand. It doesn't seem to jive. That sounds like that's a little exclusionary.
The terms that some people take offense to, it doesn't mean they take offense to the person. You can respect a person for being a person. You don't necessarily have to respect the views that they want to live or do.
But you do under law. You do under law. These are all categories that have been subject to litigation. Every one of these.
But if you're...
And you are a public entity. You're not a private entity. So to suggest that you could tear down this list or eliminate the list will be a very difficult undertaking to protect yourself from a lawsuit, which is the point of it. That's why it's there.
Shall I move on to the next section?
Yeah, next section, we move, everything else pretty much stays the same until you get to section 200, general employment categories. And we do get to a section that we've carved out here on ambulance and ambulance and fire district response. So this just puts in place a policy for individuals who may end up serving on a fire or ambulance crew. They're able to leave work or sets that tone. So we want to obviously accommodate those individuals that may work for us and also serve on those, as we need EMTs, we need firefighters. So putting that in there is just sort of a kind of preemptive at this point, but just a good idea. We then move down to performance evaluations. So the idea here is to really get to the idea of making sure that performance evaluations are done annually, that they're done consistently across the organization, that evaluation forms are approved and utilized either universally or with exceptions if there's a desire to use something else by a department head. And then the idea of merit-based pay adjustments, as well as looking forward at payment plans and other performance pay initiatives by the city. So essentially, kind of going back and saying we are committed to doing performance evaluations. We will ensure they're done consistently across the organization. And then ultimately, merit pay and pay for performance adjustments, we will have what is called a city pay plan policy, or a pay plan that we bring forward with categories of every staff member to show, to approve a pay plan with ranges to solidify pay for performance, merit-based, and those types of adjustments. So there's more work to be done, but moving to a more pay for performance model. Okay. Nothing really changes then till you get to 300. We've added some sections here. Business travel, all we really did there was say we're not going to pay for your alcohol and other things that, you know, we shouldn't be paying for when somebody is on a, just clarifying that. So not a big deal, but just clarity, yes.
Okay, so it says here parking, but are you referring to parking tickets?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that might be best clarified.
Parking fines.
Well, towing isn't really a fine.
If your towing is related to a parking infraction, it is a fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, I think, not, just to be clear too, not everything is perfect in terms of language, but from the application standpoint, you know, we just use logic when this comes through and say, okay, yeah, you got a parking ticket and you got your car towed.
Right.
Because you stupidly parked in a no parking zone. We're not paying for that when you're at your conference. Like, that's on you, you know, so don't even try.
And then, I mean, I don't know how much you guys tend to travel, if it's longer periods of time, but at case by case situation, I mean, I traveled and we had case by case on laundry and dry cleaning. And then if we had a meeting that got extended so they could cancel a day, you know, then there would be late checkout fees, and that was a case by case as well.
Frankly, we are not sending people
Okay.
like that. You know, the most we may send somebody is maybe, I don't know if a police officer ends up going to DC for anything for a small period of time. I have not had a situation where anybody's even traveled out of state in this organization since I've been here,
Okay.
or flown or anything. Because you can do everything remotely. Vacation benefits, we really wanted to hit some new language home here to discuss the purpose of vacation, because there was some just general use of vacation, personal time off in a fashion that was not, was contradictory to previous policy. So we want to ensure that, you know, the purpose of vacation is to allow the continuation of pay. It's not to elevate pay. It's to ensure that when you need your time off for your personal reasons, you can take it and get paid. In addition to that, just solidifying the fact that vacation is not intended to be used and to exceed 8 hours in a workday or 40 hours in a work week. Generally speaking, again, the concept there is if somebody gets to 40 hours in a week and you can't use your vacation to add hours, which had happened. Okay, so clarifying that, and then saying that upon termination in a good standing, we will pay out, you know, unused vacation, which is something we didn't have in the policy before,
Adam?
but was practiced. Yes.
That last line where it says upon termination
Yeah.
and if in good standing,
Yes.
I mean, if you're terminated,
So there's
are you
different.
really in good standing?
There's different. There's. I think later on there's different. Definitions of termination. Termination can be resignation, can be retirement, can be termination, right? In terms of you're being fired, right? Yeah, I mean, what this clarifies is if you're in good standing, if you retire from us and you're in good standing, you're retiring in good standing. It's generally,
Well,
yeah.
I wouldn't consider that termination.
Termination is
Your
just
job
a legal,
is,
termination is just a legal term for your job coming to an end.
Yeah.
okay.
It can come to an
If
end
that's-
by
if
retirement.
that's the
It can come
definition
to an
of
end
it,
by
then-
getting fired.
Later
That's
on,
good with me
I
then.
believe later on we discussed that a little bit.
Okay.
If you clarify it later on, that's fine, otherwise, upon completion of employment? I mean, if you don't clarify later.
I believe it's almost the last section in the book that is.
If it's clarified, that's fine, but if not, I tend to agree with John.
Well, it's a negative term, but it can be, a termination can be
Yeah.
positive in this case.
On the ending of employment.
So we'll make note of that.
Is
Yeah.
employment termination, page
Yes.
58.
And it does cover all the
Yeah.
Okay.
options.
Good, that's fine.
We tried to be consistent. It's a lot. Anyway, we'll go to personal time, same thing. Personal time, it's to be used for whatever reason and not be used in excess of 40 hours, sort of mirrors the same language as vacation. And then we get to sick leave, similarly, the language about when it should be used, for what purpose, and not exceeding the 40. And then one of the big things we would be changing
Can I ask
here.
what that means? People, how are people exceeding
So
40
for
hours?
for
I
example.
don't want to go there. but-
For example,
Some things are just,
Better left unsaid.
Okay.
I'll let you.
it has happened where an employee has had 48, 50 some hours in a pay period, and a portion of that came from time off. So if they, like, say, take time off in the middle of the week, but then still work the full 40 after that, they're getting more than 40 hours in the pay period because of their time
It's
off.
getting fixed in here.
So it's just clarifying that, and in those situations, we would back out that time off and give it back in the bank because we're not paying more than
Right.
40 hours.
Right.
That was not happening.
I see.
On varying levels.
Sorry.
Sorry, yes. So, one of the things with sick leave is a payout for sick leave upon only retirement. The individual will have their sick leave paid out. We had paid that out in cash. We would move to what is considered a retirement health savings plan. They would be paid out at the same percentages depending on their tenure with the city. And the ICMA, who we do our deferred comp with, has a program for the health savings account. The whole concept here is that the individual may split that fund between this fund and deferred comp, but by default, it would go into the retirement health savings plan. The whole concept here is it is triple tax exempt. So if an individual retires from us and they say have 30 years service and 75% of their accumulated sick leave equates to $10,000, right? In the normal situation, the city would have to, on that $10,000, if we paid it out, we'd pay about 8% or so we'd pay some money to pay it out. They would then get taxed on it at 35-40%, so their net on that would be $6,000, say, with the city paying $800 to pay them that $600 or $6,000, right? In this scenario, the full $10,000 would go into an account, tax-free. It will then be withdrawn as an HRA or a savings plan. So they have eligible expenses in their retirement for healthcare costs that can be passed on to spouses and other dependents as well. But essentially everything from your, at this point, Advil up to premiums, whatever you have to pay for, you could draw upon this, deduct it, tax exempt, and it's also invested, and the investment and the gains on it, if there are gains, are tax exempt. So saves the city money, saves the employee money. We have a date here of June 1st. We would have to get this program up and running with ICMA, which we have. But it sort of gives employees a deadline of if you want to retire ahead of this, to take cash, if that's what you prefer. We don't want that to be not an option. But this is a generally better way to do it and a strong benefit for those into their retirement. If we do move this forward, we will need another resolution establishing that program. But it's all managed by ICMA. There's no cost to managing it to the city. All of the costs are associated with managing it fall on the individual with the account.
I have a question on it.
Yes.
All right, the city employees are in the state retirement program now, correct?
Wisconsin retirement system, yes.
And they're going into the state health insurance, correct? Or they're already in it?
We are in the state health plan.
So the state has a thing where with sick time, you can use it to pay like Medicare supplement, things of that nature. Wouldn't they be eligible for that?
It would be eligible for any COBRA payments as well as any other payments. The other thing you can do with the WRS and the state health plan combined together that we're in both, you can have your WRS directly pay for your COBRA or your continued health care expenses into the future.
Yep.
So there's a lot of flexibility that people have now to cover those costs within their retirement now that we've done both. This program would be secondary to that. And if somebody had co-pays or, they just had Advil, durable medical equipment, money, whatever it is, they could draw upon this until they
So
die.
this is just a second option?
Second option, yes.
So it doesn't matter what type of insurance they have,
Does not.
it's in a separate, and they can pull it out of that okay. That's
Any qualifying medical
It's-
payment,
Yeah.
including, we believe, over-the-counter.
That sounds like they'll save money.
Well, yeah. So does-
It's a triple win really, and I mean, some people want the cash because they want to, but at the end of the day, this was brought forward by, we will also have to go to the police union and get a MOU to and put this in place as well, because with this program from a federal regulation, it is all for one and one for all. If we participate, everyone has to participate. It is not optional to pay cash. If we pay cash to anybody, everything becomes taxable. So this will be a program that we just roll in with the changes.
So is this particular program, does it pay out to spouses
Yes.
if they're deceased?
Spouses, dependents, all that, yes. It's all in the program details, but yes.
Nice,
It's a solid
yeah,
benefit
yes it is.
at literally no cost to the city. We have added in a section about maternity, paternity, and adoption leave, essentially establishing what is becoming far more popular in Wisconsin municipalities. In this particular case, with the city, an employee would have to work here for a year, and then an employee who gives birth would receive 120 hours, and then a non-carrying parent would receive 40 hours. So 3 weeks and 1 week for carrying and non-carrying, and then as well, adoption leave is put in there as well, and they can take that within the 30 days following the adoption or placement of the child or the birth of the child. So that runs concurrently. Essentially, the goal there is a lot of times what will happen is if we hire somebody and they've been here for a short period of time and they have a child and they're at that age, they have not accumulated the time off to take to hold them harmless for getting paid while having a child. So we are essentially saying that we will cover 3 weeks for the birth of a child, and then 1 week for the non-carrying individual. And adoption.
Wait, so maybe you just said this, but again, so if someone hasn't worked there for 1 year, I guess what's hard is that parents will still need that time off. I don't understand why we have to say it's 1 year.
Because it's an earned benefit.
For paid, they may still be allowed off.
I see.
They're allowed off up to 12 weeks with just your
Right.
standard leave.
Right, okay.
So this is just if you've been here a year, you have earned that time off. So it's not accessible right away, but, so.
Is it typical among other cities?
Well, that leave is becoming way more adopted in handbooks.
I guess my point is, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that it's good for the health of a society when parents can be with them. I understand the earned benefit, but it's hard for me to say that a parent's paid time off after having birth is earned. I feel like if they were valued enough to be hired for the city, we want them to have a healthy family.
Ellen?
Absolutely. This is an additional benefit. Most county governments that I've worked for do not have a policy like this. It's typically just your earned vacation or sick time. And then when that runs out, you're done. You just don't get paid for being home with the baby. So this is really a very generous and thoughtful addition to taking a leave for having a child or adopting a child. So I think you're going to find this whole handbook is geared toward attracting and retaining employees.
And to that point, I just wish it wasn't earned. I just wish that if that employee was valued enough to be hired, I wish it was immediate for this specific instance.
But that could be something down the road. True. This is new. True.
It's an earned benefit. We want to make sure they have a stake in the organization and have been
Yeah.
here long enough. So it's not just, we understand there's other time off accounts they can take to have time with their family. If they've been here for 6 months, they start accumulating other time off. This is just to promote also, tenure on some level.
Okay.
Bereavement, we did there is we defined immediate family as grandparent and grandchild. So those would move to 3 days allowed off in the event that there is a death. We move to then,
Can I ask if,
Yep.
is it up to the department head? Let's say, so there's no time off allowed for a close friend or a cousin, but maybe they're close. Is it up to that person working with the department head then to say, maybe they get flex time or something like that?
they have their other time off accounts that they can use. Yep, so personal time, vacation to take off.
I had a question on that.
Question, go ahead.
Regarding the parent and that, where does a father-in-law, mother-in-law fall into that? Because, you've been married for a while, they pretty much become a parent of some sort, but they're not included in that? Under immediate family?
It says spouse and.
Yeah.
And parent.
Yeah, but it said spouse and employee that falls under. So if your spouse's parent dies, you get that 3 days of bereavement.
Because that's a parent.
Well, it's your spouse's parent child.
Right.
Well, I interpreted it as your spouse passes, you get those 3 days.
It was on that last
Parent.
line.
Okay.
It says employee's spouse. Sorry, I should go back to it. I apologize.
I kind of breezed by that, so.
Employee's spouse. We broadened it because obviously just the family situations our dynamics can be very different nowadays. John?
I had a question for 316, the health insurance, but.
We'll get there.
Okay, that's what, I'll wait.
We have, for the first time, put in a tuition program, tuition reimbursement program to assist with employees going back to school if they so choose, and it jives with the goals and the position for the city. Again, becoming far more popular. I don't anticipate this being used a ton, but at the same time, certainly something that we have maximums on, and then as well protections in terms of tenure, time after, so they don't have, if they don't stay with us for X amount of years, they have to pay it back.
John, your question was on 316?
Yeah, it was at
Crap.
316.
Sorry.
It's just a quick question. I thought at one time we had an opt-out policy that if you didn't take the health insurance, we would pay
We stopped that with
employees.
the inclusion into the state program.
So that's completely out. We're not
Correct.
doing that at all.
We're not doing that. We'll evaluate that annually. At this point, it is in the union contract as an opt-out for $75, I think, a month or something of that, around those lines. It was taken out.
So the police have it, okay.
They have that negotiated in theirs. We removed it, A, again, to encourage to get to the 65% to get in the state health plan. B, we weren't going to reward individuals who had opportunities previously to take health insurance, now to pay them to get off when they took it private previously, and now they're bailing because it may cost a little bit more. And C, to help fund bigger priorities in this, including the tuition reimbursement, other programs like that. So offsetting that cost of what we would pay there, we can use those items in other areas to invest in our employees in a better way. That's the goal.
Does that 60% or 65% drop after a couple of years?
That does not drop.
It never drops.
That remains where we have to
So
be.
basically, we'll probably never have an opt-out payout anymore.
At this point, it comes down to math
Yeah.
and whether or not it's worth it.
Okay.
And frankly, we would have been paying more people to opt out who had options and outside of it prior to even changing to the state health plan. And again, it was just, paying for behavior that we shouldn't be paying for.
Okay.
So there's the tuition reimbursement as well as the CDL. So we will help cover the cost of CDL. So this kind of gets back to training and investing in our employees in a different way than we have previously. CDLs cost a couple $1,000s, if not a few, and we would help cover that cost if it's required, and then again, tie it down with tenure. The final piece is the service club, which is $50 to participate in local service clubs to employees for membership. Moving forward, nothing in that entire section. We have then talking about uniforms, where we provide flexibility to go with more of a uniform service or uniform program if we so decide with employees versus at the bare minimum, the guidelines would be the t-shirts and the other equipment that we have here. But building in the opportunity if a department wants to move toward a uniform to professionalize the department, we could do that. Obviously geared more toward public works and utilities, as well as we did add in a protective footwear policy. Yes.
$125 for footwear is, unfortunately, it's very light. Most places I've seen and worked at, it's usually been, somewhere between 150 and 175. And I'm just questioning whether or not that's really a sufficient amount, especially since the costs have gone up.
We looked at different policies. There's a range of up to 100 to 150 to 175. We picked 125 as a sort of middle point and a program we've never done before. We've never offered this, but certainly there is a benefit to us paying for this outside of the workplace as well, that they can utilize this. I don't know, I know they can get expensive if we need to adjust it up. Certainly that can be changed in the next iteration of this. But certainly they become their personal boots at the end of it all as well. So what's the right number? I don't know.
As a person who has to wear them, I just know they're very expensive, especially if you get something that's going to only last you a year. I mean, okay.
If the recommendation is, and it's okay to move it to 150, we can do that. If that's, or whatever it's not, it's just sort of an idea.
All the other protective gear's covered, right?
What's that?
All other protective gear, hearing protection, eye protection,
Yeah.
is all covered.
Yes.
And if you're steel-toed boots, are they required?
They will be.
Okay, then we should pony up a little more money then, because
Okay.
that's the only place you're going to use them, because even the really good ones are hard on your feet. So 150 or 175 would be closer, I would say, to making it right.
175 it is. No, it's a small price to pay. It's just,
Yes.
we need to encourage it for multiple reasons, so we can make that change.
Well, it'll help them
Adam?
choose a better pair, and it'll be better on their feet.
And that's only if it's required. Like Naomi doesn't get a pair.
Yeah, we're not, sorry, we're not saying,
Feels left out.
Okay, I just want to make sure that,
Discussion about getting those for dress shoes.
anti-slip, right? You know,
And
so
the
if you require it, then
first line
they'll
of
get
the
reimbursed.
section is for those positions that require it.
Okay.
Protective footwear.
Gotcha.
Now, are people like Alan and Jess going to be the ones determining that we need it to be, let's say, electrical rated or anti-slip rated or whatever?
yeah, we'll
Okay.
form a policy or a spec within the department to say, here's what we would recommend.
Okay.
It makes sure that, you know, it's getting reimbursed appropriately and the right standard is in place, so. We then have a telecommuting policy in here. I will just be blunt and say the goal is not to just have everybody work from home. That is not the goal of this. That is not, we are public servants. We have to be here for the public. At the same time, we have allowed this. We are in a different world. And there are positions certainly that can work from home in the event of certain situations that come about. This sets a guideline for it. We hope, it's our intention that it does not get used frequently, but in the event that somebody has the option or has to go home sick, if they can work from home or has to take care of a child or it snows, we've done this. We've had staff working remotely for many, many months on a time without a policy in place. So we've proven that it can be done. But also I'm very aware that, you know, we are supposed to be here. And it only applies to certain staff members. It's not going to apply to, you can't, you know, plow truck drivers can't work from home.
On page 33, second paragraph, first beginning paragraph there, we talk about the disciplinary action and other areas of the actual handbook. We always say up to and including termination. This left it out. Is that still in effect per se with this? That it would be up to and including, up to and including?
Where would we, I'm sorry, I'm not following where you're at.
Failure to do so about halfway through that paragraph. The first whole paragraph right there.
Failure to do so.
Result in loss of telecommunicating privileges and could result in disciplinary action. Because we're talking the security of sensitive information and so forth.
To and including termination. Okay, we can add that. Moving forward, we get into section 600. This has been the meat of the debate and compromise with staff. Work schedules. Previously, we had adopted specific work schedules for all different departments with different hours, different things. We are streamlining it and creating, there shall be set by the organization and may vary. There is a few changes to the on-call. So most of it doesn't change. What does change is section F, which they shall be paid for a minimum of 1 hour for call-in. That used to be 2 hours. The whole concept here is when we are paying somebody a wage to be on call to begin with, we were then also paying them, in addition to that, to respond, a minimum of 2 hours. So we back that to 1 hour minimum to respond. Most of the time they get called in, it's for more than an hour. There will be situations where, yes, there's a half-hour job that has to get addressed, and they will get paid for that full hour. But only hours worked shall count toward overtime. In addition to that, we have an explanation in G about what the expectation is about responding when there is a call in.
Let's go back to F. So the problem I have with going to 1 hour is I've been here, done this, and you get called in, and you know, you got to wake up, get ready, get here. I mean, you're burning over an hour just to get here, and to get back home, and then try to get back to sleep. And if you're called in on a nuisance call, which I have before, it's just really not good to only get an hour for it. It's not really worth that. And for the few times that it's going to happen over the course of a year, I really would like to see the 2 hours put in there. It's not going to happen that much, but it's just, it takes a lot out of you to get called in anyway.
They are getting paid a salary to be put on call as well.
What do they get called for? Because it's like for a week, right?
It's about $100 for public works and about $190 for wastewater and water.
That's not a lot, because you have to, for that week, you have to be ready and available at any time, which means if you like to drink, you're not going to drink that week. You know, if you want to go somewhere overnight, you got to be a half hour away. Your weekend shot for $100. And then you're taking that away too?
We're not taking that away. That is remaining.
No, I'm saying the 1 hour.
Yeah.
It just seems like we're getting on them pretty hard.
Was there instances of people taking advantage of it, perhaps?
Frankly, yes, people were getting paid quadruple pay. It was on-call pay, response pay, 2 hours. You know, it was triple dipping.
How's it triple dipping?
Because there were carve-outs in the previous handbook for certain hours people responded. And then they were adding time off on top of that. So there's different situations where we're paying.
Right. Well, you can't triple dip anymore.
No.
So, which is a good thing. I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, but something like this, for what little bit you get for on-call pay. And I know it's part of the job, but that's $100 isn't a lot for 7 days.
If we want to move it to 2, we can move it to 2.
Yeah. I mean, why is the water department almost twice as much?
Probably because that was negotiated before. And frankly, we didn't start putting public works on call until probably a few years ago to ensure response.
So, I guess, I think that if we leave it the way we have it now in the handbook with just the 1 hour, but we could always come back and review the numbers and what the budget is, and maybe even track when those on-call take place. So maybe they're on call 7 p.m., which isn't maybe that big a deal, as opposed to 1 a.m.
Right. It's the 1 a.m. ones that are the killers.
I think that's I think you're in the middle of a sleep cycle and you're woke up, you get ready, you go in, and the problem is an hour and a half, and you go back home and you try to go back to sleep, but you got to be up in a few hours anyway. that's, could be, you know, maybe that's a different, but I'm not looking to stir that pot. I'm just suggesting that we could revisit this issue. This isn't set in stone forever. It's a handbook that we're trying to put together to make some changes, and then we could always relook at that.
We
if
don't
that's
want
an
to go
issue.
back for just one thing like that. I think it's better to just get it right, and the cost of the hour is the cost of the hour. It's not going to
Yeah.
bankrupt the city in terms of it.
Okay.
It's just when we're paying and we're paying, is that the principle we want to go with on this? Because again, you know, it alleviates some double dipping or whatnot. We can move to 2 hours. It's not going to be a massive problem to move to 2 hours.
Would it be
Okay.
unreasonable to say something to the fact that between the hours of 10 and 5 a.m. would be 2 hours?
We do not want to go down any of those
Yeah,
roads.
that gets kind of
I-
sketchy.
That's where we're coming from,
Okay,
and it has caused chaos.
okay.
Can you put the Public Works on-call pay the same as the wastewater department and keep the 1 hour?
We can look at that, but
Why don't we do that? And that would, it's kind of
we
throwing a little carrot in there.
we do require 1 versus 4. So it is a significant cost to the city
Yeah.
between the departments.
Just something to think about.
Well, we could also ask Jeremy and Alan.
Yeah.
I know Alan, your tenure is short, but what is the average on-call time? So if someone gets called in, how long are they typically here working?
Varies widely based on the situation.
Is there a lot of them that are less than 2 hours?
There's a lot of them that could be less than 1 hour as well too.
And they come in and reset something,
Yep.
but like I said, it's just a pain getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning and doing that. It costs you 3 or 4 or 5 hours, depending on how hard it is to get back to sleep. So,
I would venture the majority in DPW is responding to winter storms.
So they're gonna
So they're
be
here.
6 or 8 hours.
yeah, they're here
They'll be there
anyway.
for more than the hour. It's,
So this clause is primarily affecting water department.
I would venture a guess, yes.
Which the payment is about double for the salary to be on call. So if we want to go to 2, we can go to 2. If we let it go, let it go.
Do that and do something about the on-call pay for the Public Works. Because we're,
So you want to go to 2 hours? I'll give you 1 and not the other.
if you're going to give one, do the 190. Pay the Public Works the same as,
We'll evaluate that. I think it's worth evaluating, but
all
again.
right,
yeah.
let's take a serious look at that and go from there.
Yeah.
And I'll feel better about it.
Okay.
And the consensus is to keep it at the 1 hour
For now.
for this.
For now.
Dave wants another kick in.
We'll put it into the pay plan. Getting the rest periods, we're adding a nursing mother's policy. Pretty standard nowadays to have it. Overtime. So again, overtime, we're going to a concept of it's 40 hours or more is when you get paid time and a half. And that was all over the board in the previous handbook. Different departments had it, different hours after 8 hours, going to 40 hours. Hours worked with the calculation of time off for holidays, bereavement, leave, and jury duty will be considered hours actually worked, and time off will not count. So time off of vacation, personal leave, sick leave will not count toward hours actually worked for. Okay, that's pretty standard nowadays. We were applying everything toward hours worked previously. Not every employee is hourly and eligible for overtime, so those employees who are exempt, we have a flex policy here that we understand that sometimes if there's over 40 hours work, they can flex time off.
Can we go back to the overtime?
Yep.
On page 36, number 607. So the way I read it is if you are working like a Saturday or Sunday plowing snow, it's up to the discretion of the city administrator to send employees home so they don't, like on Monday and Tuesday, so they don't
It's up to
accrue overtime?
or this
Is
supervisor.
that what you're saying?
Yes, to manage the staff to limit overtime in the event that we run into it. Now, if you look later, the pay week starts on Monday and ends on Sunday, okay? So this is an important distinction for overtime. So your clock starts on Monday. What we have built in here as a compromise is later in 609 weekend pay, okay? But generally speaking, the proper use of overtime is if somebody works, say, a 10-hour day on Monday, right? And there's no anticipated work on the weekend, that then come Friday, by Friday or during the week, those 2 extra hours that they work are taken off. So Friday becomes a 6-hour day, unless there's work to do. So the city administrator or supervisor have, the department head, have the discretion to send home employees who have met 40 hours to avoid the additional overtime cost if there is not work to be done.
Okay, so what you're saying though, from Monday to Sunday, if they work that Saturday and Sunday, they'll still get their overtime?
We have built into here as the compromise that regardless of if they've taken time off, regardless of however many hours they've worked, actually worked during the week, that in 609, there is time and a half paid on the weekend.
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday, we pay hourly employees time and a half.
How did the employees like during the week? Are they for it, against it? Are they upset? You know, if they're sent home 2 hours earlier?
It's mixed.
It's mixed.
Okay, just curious.
Again, this was the point in the handbook. There was 0 comments until section
Until
600.
it comes out, yeah, okay.
Okay? So, I mean, ultimately, what we are committing to here is, you know, Monday through Friday, get to your 40 hours. If you take time off and we call you in on the weekend, if we didn't have weekend pay, that would not be counted at time and a half until they got to 40 hours actually worked, right? At the same time, too, if you look at weekend pay, the appropriate way to manage this is, say somebody did take off on a Tuesday, 8 hours, and they come in on a Saturday and they work 8 hours. The whole concept there is to back out the time off, put it back in their bank to use at a more appropriate time, because we're asking them to work on a weekend and we're trading those hours out on that Tuesday at straight time and paying it at time and a half on the weekend. Okay? So this was the balancing act. This was the compromise that we came forward with to ensure that there was response on the weekend, that we weren't having overtime unnecessarily accumulated during the week, and that we could flex people schedule, because frankly, yeah, if it snows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and somebody has worked 40 or 42 hours in those few days or whatever, and there's not any work to do Thursday and Friday, they should be sent home to avoid paying additional costs if there is not work to be done. Certainly the department supervisor, if they have something more that has to be cleaned up or done, individuals can be called back in to work during the week. So you're on a 40-hour clock Monday through Friday. We're guaranteeing time and a half Saturday, Sunday.
Who's gonna watch over the hours?
Department heads.
The department head, okay, and then he will report to you?
Yes, ultimately, we just want to keep a better eye on it. Right now, the way we've tracked it has been, it's incredibly difficult to understand when we are actually getting overtime hours paid of 40 hours of actual hours worked in a work week. It's very difficult to determine it because we're paying different things and we can't track it very easily right now. It's frankly a mess. Okay. So this will help clarify for the department head, the proper implementation of it, as well as clarify it for the employee, what the expectation is. So that kind of covers the 609, the weekend pay.
The weekend, to me, the weekend starts Friday after work and doesn't stop until Monday morning.
In here, weekend starts at Saturday at 12 a.m.
Why not after work?
Because previously we had the work schedule is not a set time, it's set by the department and can fluctuate.
So there's no really set time, is what you're saying, for
Not-
work?
For the work week schedule, no.
Yeah, okay.
The general concept here is your general work week will be 40 hours, right? Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 3:30. But there will be times where there's a snow emergency or another emergency where that schedule needs to change to accommodate that response.
So there's still gonna be really a set schedule.
There is.
But in the winter, I know things
Yeah.
happen in the winter.
Yep.
It just does. So, all right.
And
Or any other kind of emergency like at the water department.
It's all about
Sometimes it just
communication.
happens.
It's communication with the staff and an understanding that we will respond and take the resources and put them where we need to put them to do the job. That's the goal. At the same time, when the job is done, we're not spending any more money.
Right.
And there may come a time where working 4/10s is more beneficial to everyone than 5/8s. And this allows us to do that.
Yeah.
And that's just it too. The current this will allow us to flex schedules around, to go to creative scheduling if we want to go to 4/10s, so Fridays are off. If we want to do different things amongst different departments, set that up and
That would be very popular if you did that, scheduled 4/10s.
This would allow for it. We're not saying we're doing it, but this would allow for it.
Yes. All right.
All right, that goes to that, so then we're in the section 700, which, all that changed there, I believe is, I don't even know if anything changed in 700.
Smoking, vaping, and tobacco use.
Yep, so just the kind of
And
a,
social media.
a little bit more expanded smoking, vaping, and tobacco use policy. So that was included. And then we have social media guidelines, which I believe we adopted language from the police department. And then political activity, again, and then personal appearance. Simply kind of adopting a dress your day policy, which is exactly that, dress your day. For example, if I have to go out into the field and get muddy, I'll wear jeans maybe a day on a Monday because I don't want to get dress pants dirty in the field, right? That's the concept there. I will not be wearing jeans every day. That's not the expectation, but to provide flexibility. Then we have return of property, just payment of accrued benefits. If it's not returned, can be withheld. Termination, designation, discharge, layoff, retirement. So back to John's question about the different levels of termination. And then asking for notice to be provided by an employee when they're going to self-terminate via either 2 weeks notice or 30 days for retirement. And that is everything. And then you have a nice chart here that our intern did.
A quick question that I forgot to bring up on page 55 for political activity. City employees shall not engage, it says, let's see, in furthering the interest of a candidate for public office. So that would mean endorsing a candidate. So if, for example, someone asks our police chief to endorse somebody, then that would, they couldn't?
For specific laws that prevent me from doing that anyway.
And there are federal laws that prevent elected people, like you can't come in here and have people sign your nomination papers. That's against the Hatch Act. So there are different levels of laws preventing political activity in public buildings.
I understand about political activity. I guess I do know that sometimes people will contact people and say, will you endorse me?
And it's not a good idea for, say, for example, police chief to endorse any political candidate, because if that candidate were to lose, then they have an adverse relationship with the person who won.
Right, I understand that. I'm just saying I've seen it in other communities, so, okay.
I have never worked for a company that had a handbook. So this was a lot for me to read through. But at the end, there's a signature required.
Yeah.
Yep.
What happens if you don't sign it?
Then you don't get hired.
Yeah.
You
Well,
are.
I mean, what about people already employed?
This is a at-will employment. This is
Okay.
this is the employment terms. If you do not accept with it, you are not working here.
Okay, I didn't
And then
see
a
it
copy of
anywhere,
A
but,
copy of that goes in their file
okay.
that they've
They
signed
they
for.
risk losing everything. That is back to the termination of good standing, and they risk losing everything.
And they understand that, or they will be told that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and hopefully,
We don't need that written down in here? In the end, before they sign it? Or?
I can revisit with.
I don't know.
Just-
That's why I say I
didn't
never.
get, yeah, we didn't talk about that. We can look at that.
it also helps when an employee can say, I didn't know there was that policy, and you've got their
Exactly.
signature.
I think it can be handled by saying, having a note in their file that we handed you a copy. If they
You
choose
should
not
always-
to sign.
You should always have a note
You
of
follow,
the activity.
you know what I'm saying?
I've had employees refuse to
Yeah,
sign.
exactly.
So you just document that you had
You-
the
you
meeting, you
handed them
handed
the
out the
copy.
new policies, you made them aware that changes were made.
Correct,
Okay,
and you
so it's
put that
not,
in their file.
correct.
not 100%
Not
necessary to
100%.
sign. Okay.
Has to be signed.
Can we go back to 710?
No.
No, it's 8:50, we can't.
Are we going to regulate people's private social media posts?
Generally speaking, when it comes to private social media posts as it relates to city activities and things of that nature, yes.
Okay.
So if you go on Facebook and say the city is horrible and they're doing all kinds of horrible things, that's going to affect your
You will be
employment.
coming to my office.
Sweet. So I need to delete all that stuff.
There's a difference between, you know, we just,
So I guess what I'm getting at it here is, completely understandable if a city employee gets on there and says something about the city or the employees. But what about everything else?
yeah, I mean, I think it's a case-by-case basis and certainly will be handled accordingly in accordance with the policy and guidelines. There have been however many examples of city employees, public officials posting things on their private pages that, you know, are not appropriate, and it causes them to lose their positions or credibility. And so it's by no means meant to silence somebody from sharing their opinions on social media and using that as a platform. It's more focused in line with, you know, we don't want, if somebody's commenting about an issue related to the city and they work for the city and that's known, and they're undermining the work of the city,
Yes. That's understandable.
that is not good. Can private posts undermine the work of the city? Yes.
Okay.
Any further questions?
We will make a few changes, bring it back on the next meeting, and
And a very nice job, by the way.
Yes.
Very well done. I know I complained a lot. It was very well done.
much, no, and I appreciate that from the fact that this has been a process that's been going on for about a year. just getting and tweaking it to be something that we can present and we can have a discussion on and hopefully come to consensus on to change it. And then frankly, as we hire positions, we can start putting in some of these things as a way to attract and draw talent.
All right, project updates and staff reports. Public Works, anything additional? Guess so.
About the only thing I have to update on is the crews have started or have continued placing planters, benches as part of the downtown streetscaping project. Lead Chris Newlands is calling in locates so we can identify what kind of foundations will be needed for the ornamental posts. Once we know the underlying conditions for those various post locations, we'll then be able to identify the foundations. And right there, that's where Chris and I are at from a kind of what's holding us from really starting to put together a full game plan at this point in time. And that's where I found out I'm finding out that many of my contacts that I've made over the course of my career are starting to retire. So I just found out last night I got to find a new concrete core company. So just one of the takeaways that in the last couple of weeks, as far as I age, so do all the people that that I've worked with for the past 30 years. So other than that, I have nothing else to share.
Naomi, anything?
April 23rd will be board of review, and that is from...
May 20th.
May 23rd.
Did I just
April.
say April?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
It's late.
Backwards, yeah.
Sorry.
From 3 to 5. Sorry.
Adam?
You had my report. The only thing I'll touch on is shared revenue at the state level. I have a couple handouts here if anybody's really interested on a summary from the league. If you're not in on some of the league emails and correspondence out, you can see. But generally speaking, the state legislature has come forward with a substantial change to funding local government. We're weeding through that. Some things are certainly great in terms of there's more money, it's sustainable, tied to sales tax, and it will allow it to grow based on that sales tax revenue over time. I made a little note of it. Some of the things are, it's kind of a, right now everybody's looking at it, reviewing it, kind of trying to weed through it as a municipality, but most municipalities are just thankful that there is a bill. It's a standalone bill. It's not a part of the budget. Therefore, it can't be line item vetoed. Governor Evers has stated he would veto the bill in its current form for various reasons. So there continues to be work on that, but the League of Wisconsin Municipalities is certainly involved in the effort, and certainly our support in it is if it is an increase and it's growing, that is a win for us, one that we have not seen in nearly 20 years. So we'll see where it all lands. It can always be better. You can always ask and need more money, but it is to a point where there are public hearings and it could move rather fast, and hopefully there is some level of compromise still left at the Capitol where we can get something done to help us out. That is that. Pretty exciting, actually. It is to get to a point where there is a bill is incredible. So, although Doug, whatever, Doug.
There's also a standalone bill being proposed by the legislature that would remove a lot of local control away from local municipalities for zoning purposes. And we are a home rule state, and I would hate to think the state is making determinations of how things should be zoned in our area.
That was today, right?
I don't know when it was. I just know it's coming.
It dropped today.
It dropped?
Yes.
dropped in that they're not doing it?
Announced it.
Oh, they announced it, okay.
It's a housing bill. Yeah, the league has information on it, but it was put forward today.
Well, I think there's some concern as we are in the Green Lake watershed with regard to open pit mining.
No, and there's certainly there are things in the funding bill that are controversial, that they're adding, that are sort of tacked on, whether it's permitting of quarries, and a few other things. So you can certainly, I have a couple copies, you can read it, just to kind of see what those extra things are.
Could you just email it to all of us?
I can share it, yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I have a question on the permits and inspections for Airbnbs. Is that due June 1st?
Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, I just had an inspection.
We'll have the list that we have, and we'll send out reminders.
Okay. And then how many chicken permits were taken out? Do we know?
I have
Five?
it in the
The
report.
report says
Have it in the
5.
report. 5. There's
Did
a
you
6th.
award 5?
There's been 5 issued.
But
6
have we?
applied.
Ah, okay.
There's been 2 denials and then resubmissions, but there are a total of 5.
All right. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
I don't
And we got a
have,
bet?
I don't have any particular communication this evening. Is there any comments or future agenda items from council? No? Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Doug, seconded by Jolene. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:01.